The stars above Trilith Prime shimmered like a jeweled ocean, their cold light reflecting off the sleek, obsidian hull of Inara's ship, Void Fong. Inside the cockpit, Inara's eyes, golden and slitted like a predator's, scanned the encrypted dossier projected on her HUD. Her target, Ambassador Elias Greaves, a human diplomat stationed on the neutral colony of Tarsus 4. Elias was more than a negotiator. He was the linchpin of a delicate peace treaty between the Coalition of Human Systems, CHS, and the scattered but formidable remnants of the Zevran Dominion, Inara's people. The mission was clear: eliminate him. His death would reignite tensions, giving her employers, the shadowy Xeric Syndicate, a lucrative opportunity to sell weapons to both sides. Inara's claws twitched against the ship's controls. She was no stranger to assassination, but something about this mission gnawed at her, a disquiet that refused to be silenced. Her people were already battered, refugees on the fringes of space, their glory days a fading memory. Was stoking more bloodshed truly the answer? She pushed the thought aside. Questions were luxuries she couldn't afford. Tarsus 4 was a strange amalgamation of human ingenuity and Zevran architectural beauty. Spindly towers of glass and metal jutted into the sky, while luminescent, bioluminescent flora adorned the streets below, remnants of Zevran ecological engineering. Inara moved like a shadow through the bustling spaceport, her hood concealing her silver hair and distinctive features. Her contact, a jittery human informant, had already supplied her with the ambassador's itinerary. Tonight, Elias would attend a gala at the Celestial Forum. The venue was grand, glittering with chandeliers made of Zevran crystal. It was the perfect stage for an accident. Perched high above the hall in a concealed alcove, Inara assembled her energy rifle. She locked onto Elias, a tall figure with a commanding presence, his dark hair streaked with silver. He moved through the crowd with an ease that belied the political tension surrounding him, his smile disarming even the most skeptical onlookers. Her finger hovered over the trigger. One squeeze, and it would be over. Then something unexpected happened. Elias knelt before a Zevran child, her blue skin shimmering under the crystal lights. The girl was weeping, clutching a broken pendant. "Here," Elias said softly, reaching into his jacket. He produced a small chain and carefully fixed the pendant. "It's not beyond repair, you see? Nothing truly is." The girl sniffled, her large eyes wide with awe. Elias patted her shoulder gently before rising. Inara froze. His words, so simple yet profound, struck her like a physical blow. Memories of her own people's suffering surged to the surface, their despair, their desperation. Her hand trembled, and the moment passed. Elias moved out of her sights. The night didn't end there. As Inara attempted to slip away, she found herself cornered by a squad of human security forces. Their movements were too precise, their timing too perfect. Someone had tipped them off. "Drop the weapon," a commanding voice ordered. Inara whirled, prepared to fight, but paused when she recognized the speaker, Elias himself. His gaze was steady, probing. "You're not CHS security," he said, his tone calm but edged with suspicion. "Who are you?" Inara's claws flexed. She calculated her odds. She could take down 3, maybe 4 guards before being overwhelmed. Or she could try a different approach. "Your end," she hissed, lunging. Elias sidestepped her strike with surprising agility. Instead of retaliating, he disarmed her with a deft twist and pinned her wrist. "You're Zevran," he said, his voice softer now. "Why would one of your own want me dead?" Inara snarled but said nothing. He studied her for a moment, then dismissed his guards with a wave. "Leave us." "Sir," I said, "leave us." Reluctantly, the guards withdrew. "You're working for someone who profits from war," Elias said, releasing her wrist but maintaining a cautious distance. "Your people have suffered enough. Why would you do this?" Inara's instinct screamed at her to attack, to flee, but his words gave her pause. "Because peace is a lie," she spat. "You humans broke our empire. Now you speak of treaties while my people starve in the outer reaches. You don't care about us." Elias's expression darkened. "I care more than you think. But killing me won't help your people. It'll condemn them to more suffering. The Syndicate wants chaos. Is that what you want? Despite her misgivings, Inara found herself hesitating. Elias offered her a deal. Help him uncover the syndicate's machinations, and he would ensure her people's grievances were addressed in the treaty negotiations. Why should I trust you? She demanded. You shouldn't, he admitted. But trust this. If you kill me, the syndicate wins. If you help me, there's a chance to stop them. Reluctantly, Inara agreed. Together, they began piecing together the syndicate's web of deceit, uncovering forged documents, intercepted communications, and traitors within both the CHS and Zevran factions. The deeper they dug, the clearer it became that the syndicate's ambitions extended far beyond simple profiteering. They sought to destabilize the entire quadrant, creating a power vacuum they could exploit. As the days turned into weeks, Inara found herself torn. Her initial hatred for Elias began to erode, replaced by a grudging respect and something deeper. He wasn't the monster she'd imagined. In him, she saw a rare blend of strength and compassion, a willingness to fight for a cause greater than himself. But her loyalty to her people remained a constant pull. Could she truly trust a human, even one like Elias? And what would her employers do if they discovered her betrayal? The final piece of the puzzle came when they unearthed the syndicate's ultimate plan, an assassination attempt on the Zevran High Chancellor during the treaty's signing ceremony. The attack would be framed as a human conspiracy, plunging both sides into war. We have to stop this, Elias said. Inara nodded, her claws flexing. Then we go together. The story's climax loomed as Inara and Elias raced against time to thwart the syndicate's plot. Betrayal and danger lurked at every turn, but so too did the possibility of redemption, for both the assassin and the diplomat. What would await them at the signing ceremony? Would their fragile alliance hold under the weight of old wounds and new betrayals? The stars, cold and indifferent, offered no answers. The grand chamber of the Unity Spire on Tarsus IV was a marvel of design, a testament to the shared history of Zevran and human collaboration. Tall arches mimicked Zevran bone-like architecture, while shimmering holograms of stars and galaxies reflected the human penchant for technological artistry. It was here that the treaty would be signed, a moment meant to mark the end of a bloody chapter between their species. Inara stood in the shadows of the mezzanine, her sharp gaze scanning the crowd below. Ambassadors, dignitaries, and military leaders filled the hall, their conversations buzzing like the nervous hum of an electric current. At the heart of the chamber, Elias stood beside the Zevran High Chancellor, Cyril Threx, a figure whose commanding presence belied her frail, aged form. Cyril's silver-blue skin glowed faintly in the soft light, her ceremonial robe flowing like liquid mercury. Elias had placed his trust in Inara, but her every instinct screamed at her to leave. If they failed, she'd be a marked traitor, not just to the syndicate, but to her people. She adjusted the concealed comlink in her ear. Elias's voice crackled through, calm but urgent. Security reports movement in the lower levels. Any sign of syndicate agents? Not yet, she murmured. But they're here. They wouldn't miss this opportunity. As the ceremony began, Inara moved quietly along the mezzanine, her claws softly clicking against the metallic floor. She watched the syndicate's plan unfold like a deadly dance. Two Zevran operatives disguised as maintenance workers had slipped into the lower levels. A third, a human dressed as a dignitary, lingered dangerously close to the High Chancellor. Two in the vents, Inara reported. One near Cyril. I'll take the latter. No, Elias countered. You can't risk getting that close. We'll handle this surgically. I've got a security detail moving in. Inara clenched her fists. Too slow. If we wait, the Chancellor's dead. Before Elias could argue, she cut the comlink and leapt over the railing, landing gracefully behind the would-be assassin. The man barely had time to react before her claws raked across his wrist, sending the concealed blade he'd been holding clattering to the ground. He stumbled back, drawing a plasma pistol, but Inara moved faster. A swift kick sent him crashing into a nearby pillar, unconscious. The comlink buzzed back to life. Inara, what the hell are you doing? Elias demanded. Saving your fragile diplomat, she hissed, dragging the unconscious man into the shadows. Below, The two operatives in the vents had rigged an explosive device near the chamber's support column. Their plan was to bring the entire structure down, killing everyone inside and ensuring the treaty would never be signed. Inara dropped into the lower levels, landing in a crouch. Her sharp senses picked up the faint hum of the bomb's energy core. She moved quickly, dispatching one of the operatives with a silent strike. The other turned, activating a defensive drone. The small machine whirred to life, its twin laser cannons locking onto her. She dove behind a pillar as a barrage of energy bolts scorched the air around her. "Elias," she growled into the comlink. "Little help here?" "On my way," he replied, his voice strained. Moments later, Elias appeared, his own weapon drawn. With precise shots, he disabled the drone and struck the remaining operative, who crumpled to the floor. Inara stared at him, surprised. "Not bad for a diplomat." "I've had practice," he said, breathing hard. "Can you disarm that bomb?" Inara crouched by the device, her sharp eyes scanning its mechanisms. "This tech is Zevran. High grade. It'll take a few minutes." "Minutes we don't have," Elias muttered, covering her as she worked. As Inara's claws deftly dismantled the bomb, a sudden voice echoed in the chamber above. It was smooth, resonant, and chillingly familiar. "Ladies and gentlemen," the speaker announced, "allow me to introduce the true architects of peace and its destruction." Inara froze. Her blood ran cold as she recognized the voice. Zorik, a Zevran noble and secret syndicate lieutenant. He had been instrumental in her recruitment years ago. Elias's voice cut through her thoughts. "Do you know him?" "Yes," she said bitterly. "Too well." Zorik stepped into view above them, flanked by heavily armed syndicate enforcers. He held a small device in one hand, a secondary detonator. "Ah, Inara," he called, his tone mocking. "I should have known you'd betray us. But it's not too late. Surrender now, and I might let the human live." Inara finished disarming the bomb and rose slowly, her claws glinting. "You always did underestimate me, Zorik." "Perhaps," he said, pressing the detonator. Nothing happened. Elias smirked. "I think you'll find your plan has some holes." Zorik's expression darkened, and he gestured to his enforcers. "Kill them." The ensuing fight was chaos. Inara moved like a specter, weaving between enemies with deadly precision. Her claws tore through syndicate armor, while Elias covered her, taking down targets with his plasma pistol. The chamber shook with the sounds of battle, the brilliant architecture now a backdrop to destruction. Zorik, realizing the tide was turning, activated a personal shield and made for the exit. Inara caught sight of him and pursued. "You can't run from this," she shouted, her voice echoing through the halls. Zorik turned, his face twisted with fury. "You're a fool, Inara. Do you really think this human cares for you? For our people? He's using you." Inara hesitated, but only for a heartbeat. "Maybe he is, but at least he's trying to save lives, not destroy them." With a final, desperate lunge, she breached Zorik's shield and struck him down. As the dust settled, Inara and Elias stood amidst the ruins of the chamber. The treaty signing had been delayed, but the threat had been neutralized. Elias looked at her, his expression unreadable. "You saved countless lives today." She nodded, but her heart was heavy. "But at what cost? The syndicate won't stop, and my people, they'll see me as a traitor." "Not if we stand together," Elias said. "This isn't over, Inara. It's just the beginning." The stars outside shimmered, indifferent witnesses to their fragile alliance. Inara stood by the viewport of the Celestial Spire's command center, gazing out at the star-flecked void. Below her, the cleanup efforts continued. Security teams rounded up the surviving syndicate agents, and engineers worked to repair the damaged infrastructure. Yet her thoughts weren't on the immediate aftermath. They were on the storm she knew was brewing. The syndicate wouldn't forgive her betrayal. They would come for her, and for Elias. Behind her, Elias approached, his steps quiet but deliberate. "You're leaving," he said, not as a question but as a statement. Inara turned, her golden eyes meeting his. "I've done what I can here. The syndicate won't stop with one failed mission. I need to go deeper, dismantle them at the source." "And you think you can do that alone?" he asked, crossing his arms. "I've spent my entire life alone," she replied, her tone cold but tinged with regret. "I'm good at it." Elias stepped closer. "You're good at more than that, Inara. You saw today what we can accomplish together. You don't have to fight this war on your own." For a moment, she considered his words. There was a raw sincerity in his voice, one that tugged at the barriers she built around herself. "I can't stay," she said finally, "but I won't abandon you to face this either. I'll contact you when I know more." Elias nodded, though disappointment flickered in his eyes. "Then take this." He handed her a small, unassuming data crystal. "What is it?" "A contact protocol," he explained. "It'll link you directly to me through secure channels." And, he added with a faint smile, "It's got a failsafe. If the syndicate catches you with it, it'll self-destruct." She smirked, sliding the crystal into a hidden compartment in her belt. "Paranoid for a diplomat." "I prefer prepared," he said. Inara departed Tarsus for aboard the Void Fong, setting her course for the Syndicate's known operational zones in the outer reaches. Her first stop was the barren moon of Kalis V, a lawless haven for mercenaries, smugglers, and Syndicate operatives. Kalis V was a world stripped of its resources long ago, its surface a cracked and desolate wasteland. The only settlement was a sprawling complex of interconnected domes and tunnels, a hive of criminal activity. Disguised as a wandering mercenary, Inara slipped into the settlement's bustling bazaar. The air was thick with the scent of burning fuel and the acrid tang of sweat and metal. She was hunting for one man, Drelvin, a mid-level Syndicate operative who managed their logistics in this sector. If she could capture him, she might gain access to their higher echelons. Drell was a towering figure, his cybernetic enhancements making him stand out even in a crowd of misfits. Inara tracked him to a seedy cantina on the outskirts of the bazaar. She watched from the shadows as he downed a glowing blue drink and barked orders to his underlings. Her opportunity came when he stumbled out of the cantina alone, heading toward a private skiff. She moved swiftly, disabling the nearby surveillance drones and intercepting him just as he keyed in his access code. A swift strike to his cybernetic arm disabled it, and she pinned him against the skiff's hull. "Who?" he began, but she silenced him with a blade pressed to his throat. "Drelvin," she said, her voice low and deadly. "You're going to tell me everything you know about the Syndicate's leadership." He sneered, though his eyes betrayed his fear. "You think they'll let me live if I talk? They'll rip me apart." "I'm offering you a chance to walk away," Inara replied, her claws grazing his neck. "Tell me what I want to know, or I'll leave you here for them to find. Your choice." Under the threat of death, and worse, Drell talked. He revealed the existence of a Syndicate outpost hidden within a nebula near the Valatrix cluster. It served as a key relay point for their operations, a place where high-ranking members often met to coordinate their plans. "It's heavily fortified," Drell warned. "You won't stand a chance alone." Inara smirked. "Who said I'm alone?" She left him unconscious and tied up for local bounty hunters to collect. As she boarded the Void Fong and plotted her course, she activated the data crystal Elias had given her. His face appeared on her console, tired but resolute. "You're calling sooner than I expected." "I've got a lead," she said. "A Syndicate outpost near Valatrix. It's big enough to be worth hitting." Elias nodded. "Send me the coordinates. I'll mobilize what resources I can." "They'll see you coming," she warned. "Not if we coordinate," he replied. "We'll hit them from two sides, your stealth, my strike team. If we can capture their leaders, we might finally get the upper hand." For the first time, Inara felt a flicker of hope. The Valatrix cluster was a swirling mass of emerald and crimson gas clouds, beautiful but treacherous. Hidden within its depths was the Syndicate outpost, a sprawling station bristling with weapons and patrol craft. Inara infiltrated the station through a maintenance airlock, her movements silent and precise. Meanwhile, Elias's team launched a diversionary assault, drawing the Syndicate's defenses away from her position. Inside, the corridors were dimly lit, the air heavy with the hum of machinery. Inara moved like a shadow, disabling cameras and guards with calculated efficiency. Her objective was the command center, where the Syndicate senior officers would be coordinating their response to Elias's attack. If she could take them alive, they might hold the key to dismantling the entire organization. The station shuddered as explosions from Elias's team rocked its outer defenses. Inara pressed forward, her claws itching for the fight to come. When she reached the command center, she found it heavily guarded. Drawing a pair of energy daggers, she prepared for the battle that would determine the future of the war and her own fate. What lay beyond the command center? Would Inara and Elias finally gain the upper hand? Or would the Syndicate's shadowy leaders prove too elusive? The stars outside burned with anticipation, their light a silent witness to the unfolding saga. The command center loomed before Inara, its reinforced doors a stark reminder of the Syndicate's penchant for paranoia. From her position in the shadows, she observed two heavily armed guards stationed at the entrance. Both wore advanced combat suits equipped with thermal sensors. Her usual tactics of stealth would be less effective here. She weighed her options. She could engage them directly, but the noise might alert the officers inside. Alternatively, she could create a distraction, though that risked them calling for reinforcements. Her decision was made for her when her comlink buzzed with Elias's voice. Inara, we're running out of time. My team's pinned down in the docking bay, and reinforcements are on the way. Hold your position, she replied tersely. I'll handle the command center. With no time to spare, she activated a small EMP device and tossed it toward the guards. The device emitted a pulse, temporarily disabling their suits and sensors. Before they could recover, she sprang into action. Her energy daggers flashed in the dim light, striking with precision. Both guards fell silently to the ground. Inara keyed into the security panel, overriding the door's locking mechanism. The heavy doors slid open with a hiss, revealing the command center. Inside, a group of Syndicate officers stood around a holographic display projecting the station's tactical layout. At the center of the group was a tall figure clad in black combat armor, his face obscured by a helmet. Inara recognized him instantly, Zork's replacement, Commander Vrelth. Vrelth turned as the doors opened, his voice cold and calculating. I expected you, Inara. Zorik warned us about your treachery before his untimely demise. Inara stepped forward, daggers at the ready. Then you should know how this ends. The officers scrambled for weapons, but Inara moved with lethal efficiency. She darted between them, her energy daggers carving arcs of light through the air. Within moments, only Vrelth remained. He drew a massive plasma blade, its energy crackling ominously. You've made a grave mistake, coming here alone. Inara smirked. Who said I'm alone? As if on cue, the station rocked with another explosion. Vrelth stumbled, momentarily distracted. Inara seized the opportunity, launching herself at him. Their weapons clashed in a blinding flash of energy, sparks flying as they exchanged rapid blows. Vrelth was strong, far stronger than she'd anticipated. But Inara was faster. She exploited his slower movements, striking at the joints of his armor. Their fight spilled into the control consoles, shattering monitors and sending sparks flying. Finally, with a well-timed feint, Inara disarmed him, her dagger pressed against his throat. Your choice, Vrelth, she hissed. Talk, or I'll make sure you don't leave this room alive. Vrelth chuckled darkly, even with the blade at his neck. You think you've won? You don't even understand what you're fighting against. Then enlighten me, Inara growled, pressing the dagger closer. You and your human friend are pawns in a much larger game, Vrelth sneered. The Syndicate isn't just some criminal network. We're building a new order, one where neither humans nor Zevrans will dictate the galaxy's future. Your little rebellion is a pebble in a river. It might make a ripple, but the current will sweep you away. Who's behind it? She demanded. Vrelth's laughter was cut short by a sharp hiss. Inara turned just in time to see a small drone hovering behind him, its red eye flashing ominously. Wait, Vrelth began, but the drone emitted a bright pulse of energy. His body convulsed as the device fried his neural pathways, silencing him permanently. Damn it! Inara snarled, slicing the drone in half with her dagger. The room's displays flickered, and a distorted voice echoed through the speakers. Well done, Inara. You've proven yourself resourceful. Who are you? she demanded, scanning the room for the source. Someone who sees potential in chaos, the voice replied cryptically. But don't worry, we'll meet soon enough. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Inara alone in the silent, ruined command center. With no time to spare, Inara accessed the station's mainframe, downloading everything she could on the Syndicate's operations. The files were heavily encrypted, but Elias's team would have the expertise to crack them. She activated her comlink. Elias, the command center's secure. I'm sending you the data now. Understood, he replied, relief evident in his voice. We're wrapping things up here, but we've taken heavy losses. We need to extract before reinforcements arrive. Meet me at the rendezvous point, she said. I'll cover you. As Inara made her way back to the Void Fong, the station's alarms blared. Syndicate reinforcements were closing in, their gunships already engaging Elias's strike team. She sprinted through the chaotic corridors, her claws digging into the deck plates for traction. Behind her, Syndicate guards shouted orders, their plasma rifles lighting up the halls with deadly streaks of energy. Reaching the docking bay, she found Elias and his surviving team pinned down behind a barricade. Their ship, a battered freighter, was taking heavy fire from enemy gunships. Inara didn't hesitate. She leapt onto a nearby maintenance scaffold, using its height to flank the Syndicate forces. Her daggers flashed as she cut through the guards, creating an opening for Elias's team to retreat. Move, she shouted, covering their escape. Elias grabbed her arm as they boarded his ship. You're insane, you know that? Complaints later, she shot back, pulling him inside just as the ship's ramp closed. The freighter and the Void Fong blasted out of the docking bay, weaving through enemy fire as they made their escape. Hours later, aboard Elias's ship, Inara stood in the cramped command room, watching as his team worked to decrypt the stolen data. The files were extensive, containing everything from supply routes to personnel rosters, and something more. Elias pointed to a schematic on the display. This is a station design I've never seen before. It's massive. Inara frowned. What is it? Looks like a weapons platform, Elias said, his tone grim. If the Syndicate's building this, they're not just planning to destabilize the quadrant. They're preparing for war. Inara's claws flexed involuntarily. Then we stop them, no matter the cost. Their eyes met, a shared determination passing between them. The Syndicate had drawn its battle lines, and the galaxy's fragile peace hung in the balance. Together, Inara and Elias would have to navigate the shadows of conspiracy and war, forging alliances in the unlikeliest of places. The stars outside burned brighter than ever, as if daring them to face the trials ahead. The stolen Syndicate files revealed grim truths. Their operations extended far beyond smuggling, assassinations, and political subversion. They had been constructing a fleet of highly advanced warships equipped with weapons that rivaled anything the Coalition of Human Systems, CHS, or the remnants of the Zevran Dominion could muster. At the center of it all was a massive weapons platform, codenamed Eclipse Station. Eclipse Station was no ordinary base. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol of domination, capable of annihilating planets or entire fleets with terrifying efficiency. Its schematics showed an enormous energy core surrounded by an array of particle disruptors and quantum torpedo launchers. Elias leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. If this station goes online, the Syndicate won't need to play both sides. They'll dominate the quadrant outright. Inara stared at the holographic projection of the station, her golden eyes narrowing. Where is it? Elias's team worked feverishly, decrypting location data buried within the files. One of the analysts, a wiry man named Talon, finally spoke up. It's in the Tartolin Abyss, a stellar graveyard on the edge of explored space. Tartolin Abyss, Elias repeated, frowning. That's uncharted territory. No official patrols, no surveillance. Perfect for hiding something this big. Inara crossed her arms. Then that's where we go next. Despite their determination, both Inara and Elias knew they couldn't face the Syndicate alone. They needed allies, unlikely ones. Their first stop was a Zevran refugee colony on the Outer Rim, where remnants of the once proud Dominion had taken refuge. The colony, a sprawling collection of makeshift habitats orbiting a barren moon, was a testament to their resilience, but also their desperation. Inara was met with hostility the moment she disembarked from her ship. Her reputation as a syndicate assassin preceded her, and the colony's guards trained their weapons on her. "Wait," Elias shouted, stepping forward with his hands raised. "We're not here to fight." A tall Zevran woman emerged from the crowd, her bioluminescent markings glowing faintly. It was Sereth Vel, one of the last surviving commanders of the Dominion. She eyed Inara with suspicion. "Why should we trust you?" Sereth demanded. "You've shed Zevran blood in service of your human masters." Inara stepped forward, her tone steady but sharp. "Because I know what the Syndicate is planning. And if we don't act now, there won't be any Zevrans, or humans, left to fight for." She explained the Syndicate's ambitions and the threat posed by Eclipse Station. Though Seretha's skepticism remained, the gravity of the situation was undeniable. "You'll have our support," Sereth said finally. "But if you betray us, assassin, I'll kill you myself." As they left the Zevran colony, Inara and Elias set out to rally additional allies. The CHS contributed a small strike force, led by Admiral Corvin, a pragmatic but fiercely loyal officer who had once been Elias's mentor. Corvin was reluctant to trust Inara, but Elias vouched for her, convincing him that their alliance was essential. The combined forces of humans and Zevrans were modest compared to the Syndicate's fleet, but they had one advantage: surprise. The Syndicate didn't know their plans had been exposed, nor did they expect such a diverse coalition to form against them. Elias called a war council aboard his flagship, the Resolute. Holographic displays showed the Tartlan Abyss, a tangled maze of stellar debris and gravity wells. "Our best chance is to hit them before Eclipse Station goes operational," Elias said. "The Tartlan Abyss will make navigation difficult, but it'll also give us cover." Inara pointed to the schematics of the station. "The energy core is the key. If we can overload it, the entire station will collapse." Admiral Corvin frowned. "And what about the fleet protecting it? They'll tear us apart before we get close enough." "That's where I come in," Inara said, her voice firm. "I can infiltrate the station and disable their defenses from within." The room fell silent. It was a bold plan, and a dangerous one. The fleet entered the Tartlan Abyss under cover of darkness, their ships cloaking fields blending with the swirling nebulae. The journey was treacherous, the gravitational anomalies threatening to rip them apart at every turn. As they approached the Syndicate's coordinates, Eclipse Station came into view. It was massive, its dark surface bristling with weaponry and swarming with patrol craft. Inara prepared for her mission, donning a sleek infiltration suit equipped with adaptive camouflage. Elias met her in the hangar bay as she boarded a small stealth shuttle. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Yes, I do." He hesitated, then placed a hand on her shoulder. "Be careful." With a nod, she entered the shuttle and launched toward the station. Navigating Eclipse Station's outer defenses was a nerve-wracking ordeal. Inara's shuttle clung to the shadows, avoiding patrols and automated turrets. She finally found an unguarded maintenance hatch and slipped inside. The station's interior was as cold and menacing as its exterior. Inara moved silently through its labyrinthine corridors, using her knowledge of Syndicate protocols to avoid detection. Her objective was the control center, where she could disable the station's shields and disrupt its power grid, paving the way for the Coalition fleet's assault. As she crept closer to her goal, she encountered resistance. Syndicate guards, patrol drones, and automated turrets. Each obstacle tested her skills, but she pressed on, her determination unwavering. Finally, she reached the control center, a cavernous room filled with glowing consoles and holographic displays. She began her work, hacking into the station's systems and planting viruses to disable its defenses. But as she worked, an alarm blared, and the room flooded with Syndicate enforcers. At their head was a figure she hadn't expected to see: Zorik. "You should have stayed dead," she snarled, her daggers flashing as she prepared for battle. Meanwhile, the Coalition fleet engaged the Syndicate's forces outside the station. The battle was chaotic, with ships weaving through the nebula as laser fire and explosions lit up the darkness. Elias commanded the Resolute, coordinating strikes and keeping morale high despite the overwhelming odds. Inara, he called over the comlink, his voice strained. We can't hold out much longer. What's your status? Inside the station, Inara fought desperately against Zorik and his forces. Her suit was damaged, her movements slowed, but she refused to give up. Almost there, she panted, dodging a strike from Zorik's energy blade. Just hold them off a little longer. The stars seemed to burn brighter as the battle reached its peak, the fate of the quadrant hanging in the balance. Would Inara succeed in disabling Eclipse Station, or would the Syndicate's ambition plunge the galaxy into chaos? The answer lay in the heart of the abyss. Inara gritted her teeth as Zorik's energy blade arced toward her. She twisted, narrowly avoiding the strike, and countered with a slash of her own. Her claws tore through his armor, leaving a deep gash that sparked with exposed circuits. "You're persistent, assassin," Zorik growled, clutching his wound. "But persistence won't save you, or your pathetic allies." Inara didn't respond. She lunged again, this time driving him back against the edge of the command console. With a final, ferocious strike, she plunged one of her energy daggers into his chest. His eyes widened in shock, and he crumpled to the floor, the light fading from his body. She turned to the console, blood pounding in her ears. Zorik's death bought her precious seconds, but the Syndicate forces were closing in. She quickly activated the virus she'd planted, her claws dancing over the holographic keys. The station shuddered violently as her program took effect. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and the protective shields around Eclipse Station began to collapse. "Elias!" she shouted into her comlink. "The shields are down. Hit the core now." Aboard the Resolute, Elias heard her call and wasted no time. "All ships, target Eclipse Station's core," he commanded. "Fire everything we've got." The Coalition fleet unleashed a coordinated barrage of torpedoes and energy blasts. The station's outer hull buckled under the assault, massive explosions tearing through its superstructure. Inside, Inara felt the station groan and tremble as its power grid began to overload. She sprinted toward the nearest escape pod, narrowly avoiding collapsing beams and bursts of fire. Her comlink crackled to life. "Inara, are you clear?" Elias's voice was taut with worry. "Almost," she replied, leaping over a chasm that had opened in the floor. "Just keep firing." She reached the escape pod and launched herself into the seat, slamming her fist against the controls. The pod shot out of the station, its trajectory taking her toward the fleet. From the safety of her escape pod, Inara watched as Eclipse Station succumbed to its fate. Its energy core, destabilized by the virus and the Coalition's relentless assault, erupted in a massive explosion. A blinding light engulfed the station, sending shockwaves rippling through the Tartalan abyss. The remaining Syndicate ships scattered, their forces in disarray. Without the station and their leader, the Syndicate's grip on the quadrant was broken. A cheer erupted across the Coalition fleet, but Inara felt only exhaustion. The battle was won, but at a cost she could feel deep in her bones. Back aboard the Resolute, Inara met with Elias in the briefing room. He looked tired, his uniform singed and streaked with soot, but his eyes were bright with relief. "You made it," he said, smiling faintly. "Barely," she replied, sinking into a chair. "But the Syndicate's not done. This was just one station. They'll regroup." "They might," Elias admitted. "But this victory sends a message. They're not invincible." Inara nodded, though a part of her remained skeptical. The Syndicate's shadow loomed large, and she knew their remnants would continue to operate in the galaxy's darker corners. "What happens now?" she asked. Elias leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "The treaty will be signed, and our alliance with the Zevrans will strengthen. But the real work begins here, rebuilding trust, preventing the Syndicate from exploiting our divisions again." "And me?" Elias studied her for a moment. "That's up to you. You've earned the right to disappear if you want to. Or," he hesitated, "or you could help us. Use what you know about the Syndicate to root out their operations. It won't be easy, but it could make a real difference." Inara stood at the viewport, staring out at the stars. They seemed brighter now, less cold and indifferent. "I'll stay," she said finally, "but only because there's still work to be done. I'm not doing this for humans or for Zevrans. I'm doing it because someone has to. Elias smiled, a hint of admiration in his gaze. That's good enough for me. As the Resolute prepared to return to Coalition space, Inara felt a rare flicker of hope. The galaxy's wounds would take time to heal, but for the first time, she believed they could. The Syndicate might rise again, and new threats would undoubtedly emerge, but she was no longer alone. Together, she and Elias would face whatever came next, one battle at a time. And the stars, eternal and unyielding, would bear witness to their fight for a better future.